Netflix is facing anger in its ranks and in public for streaming a controversial new program from comedian Dave Chappelle. The stand-up special is called The Closer. In it, Chappelle speaks extensively about the LGBTQ community, especially trans people. Some critics say that Chappelle mocks the transgender population. Others say that the special pays tribute to a specific transgender woman he knew. And still others say it's all jokes. This much is clear. People are watching. The Closer has been streamed more than 10 million times since it was released. Activists are also paying attention. The media watchdog group GLAAD said that the special incites hatred and violence and argues, quote, now is the time for Netflix execs to listen to LGBTQ employees, industry leaders, and audiences and commit to living up to their own standards.
I do really appreciate everybody in the last video, the video I did by myself where I started talking about the updates for the Netflix stuff. I put out on Friday. I do really appreciate. Yes, we'll still stream on YouTube, Emira. We're just gonna be also hosting it on the website. So if you want to be in stream chat, you're gonna have to be on the website. But we'll still be streaming via YouTube. I have no plans on changing that. I don't really know enough about Twitch, and I don't really want to. I might at some point like do a mirror to Twitch and just let people watch there, but I would need enough mods to be able to watch the Twitch chat because I will never pay attention to it, and go from there. Like I don't know. Twitch is such an abusive situation, and while YouTube is not great either, I can control for YouTube. YouTube feels like something we can manage. Well, Twitch has got its own huge issues.
And we have talked about also, hosting stuff on some of the various free and open source sites, just so that way there's a backup, right? Like if something really happens, shit hits the fan and this channel goes down, we'd like to have, a backup that people can still access our content through.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least a place that, is probably going to protect trans people better. So,
if you want to know where to donate to White Nervosa, Niana, you can go to White Nervosa's Patreon. I believe the levels are something like $5, $10, and like $50. But yeah, they've been an amazing human being. We thought this would take weeks. It took like getting the basic stuff up like days, hours. It was very quick. So that's a thing. And so yeah, if you want to support White Nervosa, please go to their Patreon. They have been nothing but incredibly nice to us and trying to explain stuff to us.
Mm-hmm.
They helped my silly butt figure out how to put API numbers in things, which is not my specialty. Also, Twitch hasn't fixed hate rates. That's true, and that's true, Aaron. You can put Twitch chat in emotes only, which I would probably do because I don't care. So that's the thing. Trying to think of anything else that we had happen. Oh, I was going to talk about the comments. So, spicy popcorns, put those in links for stream. I want to, and maybe food. I will find those at a time.
Yes, I would love to read those.
Yes. Actually, yeah, post them in the food chat. I'll just read them out. Yeah, sure, post it. I don't care. Whatever. What is it? By the way, for those who are new, Tiamat is one of our lovely and wonderful mods, and she has a lovely habit of making fucking amazing. All right, so
popcorn, yes.
Yes, so Tiamat's
popcorn.
Cinnamon cinder corn.
Oh God.
Heavy on the olive oil, 5 salt, 4 mustard powder, 3 ground peppers, fresh ground ideally, 3 paprika, 3 cinnamon, 2 oregano, 2 cayenne. The bird is not immediate. If you start housing this look for a bite, you might lose the back of your throat. You'll be surprised. Cindercorn is very cute. It actually, Cindercorn sounds like some kind of really like evil My Little Pony.
So don't shove like 5 handfuls in at once, is what this says. Because it will burn at some point.
Come back to every stream so you too can get Tiamat's weekly
weekly popcorn updates. Yes.
But I just want to say to everybody who's watched recently, like, those who have been posting in comments some of the supportive stuff, it really does mean a lot. I'll be honest. And we'll talk about this in a minute when we get to the Netflix stuff, because I want to keep that part separate. This is more about, you know, my experience and Zena's experience of me. One of the things that I really struggle with is doubt. And sometimes I want to make sure that I'm right, that I'm coming from this from the clearest and most concise and most logical standpoint with as much nuance as humanly possible. And my experience of that first Dave Chappelle video was real rough. Because we didn't get a lot of them. At least I didn't see all of them. But we did get a number of messages or comments that were essentially calling me a white supremacist. Because I dared to disagree with Dave Chappelle and say that how he was acting was transphobic. That shit really sucks. One, because I think it's a thought-terminating cliche. I mean, if I want to be really honest about it, it feels like it just shuts things down. But two, it also really makes things difficult because it ignores the bigotry of what Dave Chappelle did. Emra Faye said, I just want to say how happy I am to see Zena take a role in these discussions. I really appreciate you.
Aw, thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate Zena too.
Thanks.
We love you. But the thing that really fucks with me is that, like, a lot of this was coming from people of color, and I'm not trying to, like, play victim, and I'm certainly not trying to say that these people aren't entitled to their opinions. But this is why that second video came out. Because at a very clear level, we talk about the through line of white supremacy within Caucasian, white people, whatever you want to fucking call us. And we talk about the way that this is built systemically into culture within the halls of power. It is a fucking fact. You are swimming in it. I agree. Art Ren is the best Ren.
Aw.
But when you talk about other groups, like the nationalism or the xenophobia of, say, the CCP, or you talk about the homophobia and the transphobia of, say, the black community, and you talk about the historical reasons why that could be a combination of, you know, typical transphobia and bigotry, but also the effects of a religion that can be easily interpreted into a conservative mindset. And this is not bashing on Christianity, though Christianity does suffer from this a lot. I saw a conversation Bosch had about this recently where he said, you know, why do you think that they taught Christianity to, you know, why did slave masters teach Christianity to their slaves? Because, you know, they wanted to save their souls? No, they didn't give a shit. Now, if I want to be conspiratorial, I can say that's a control mechanism, because it's pretty easy to interpret that thing to be that way. Now, is that how Christianity is supposed to be? No. I know plenty of good Christians. One of my dear friends on this server, Witchy Lizzie, is a Christian, and I deeply appreciate her. But I need you guys to understand that, like, when we're pointing at this stuff, we're talking about large systems, and we're talking about the ways in which they cause people to act out. What Dave Chappelle did was not just simply some sort of, like, was not just simply sort of saying things that were offensive. They were things that fall into a really weird trend where people easily end up in a situation where they're just saying things. They're just saying a thing. And that thing, by definition, starts turning into these sort of rants about a particular group or a particular situation. The problem is that, do I think that, like, Dave Chappelle intended harm? I can't know. I can't be in his head. Do I think that he did? I don't really know. I go back and forth. But the fact that he so ignorantly threw out statements such as, you know, Gender is real. Not understanding that what he was talking about was sex, and nobody argues that, and this is just a misnomer from TERFs, but said he was on Team TERF. Compared the genitals of trans women to the Impossible Burger. That's not funny. It's just not. It's indoctrinating a cis audience to think of a trans woman's genitals as not real. I watched today Vosh's take on the whole Dave Chappelle thing, and I was pretty disappointed. And this is not me doing a big pushback or anything like that. It's just simply saying that these aren't funny jokes. They're just not. And I would say that anyone who did find them funny, there's nothing wrong with that person. Dave Chappelle is really good at delivering a joke. But there also is a level to which you're okay with that idea. Well, and Adrian, I would say even then, the whole like comparing genitals to meat and all that stuff gets weird anyway too, because that gets really weirdly objectifying, and there's some of the weird shit incels have said, I'm not going to repeat here, that have to do with Arby's. Like, you can get into some really weird tangents with just that whole line of thinking. So rather than try to like steelman it and say, oh, well, he's just telling a joke, but it could be perceived because it's adjacent to transphobia, which is what Vosh's kind of argument was. My argument's really simple. It's just transphobic. And I don't mean this in the woke scold way. I'm not saying we should deplatform or get rid of him. I do think Netflix does need to take down the special, not because I think that he shouldn't work, and not because I don't think that people can enjoy his comedy, but because it's not as simple as just him. He's being platformed. And he's being platformed by a website, by a company who has made regular claims to supporting people like us. Those claims mean nothing. They've tried to drag the name of other comedians in there, and those comedians have spat back in their face saying, you don't get to use us as your shield. Might as well just transition right into this and call the whole fucking thing a segment. So,
absolutely.
Let's see if we can get this set up while I'm doing so. But I just need everyone to understand that this is the problem we deal with here, is that, and I know this is going to piss off certain lefties because I know they hate idpoll. I don't care. I really don't. I think idpoll is fucking cringe. I do think idpoll creates problems, because it leads to issues like people like Blair White or Candace Owens, where we can't make reasonable claims about their level of validity. Blair White is a trans woman, but that doesn't mean we should listen to every trans woman, especially if they're saying some transphobic garbage. I think we can hold that idea. But there's a bad habit people have of being so anti-idpoll that they just run from it in every conceivable way, and they don't want to actually call things for what they are. There are some situations where the experiences of marginalized people really do matter. They don't matter more than empirical reality, but they do matter. And so when I see a cis guy, in this case Vosh or other lefties I saw online, say this particular joke, the Impossible Burger joke, isn't transphobic, they don't get to make that claim. They just don't. They can choose not to believe us. They can choose to ignore us. But the fact is that our identities, our experiences of gender, our experiences of who we are, that is what gives us insight. We can look at certain situations and go, that's racist, or that is this, because we can see very clearly where the power dynamic or where the stereotype or the thing is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that that joke is funny is really disturbing to me. The idea that my genitals can be compared to a promotion Burger King did is fucking weird. And the problem is it indoctrinates a cis audience to make that joke in their head, because you know what those people are going to do now? They're not going to be laughing along with us. They're going to be thinking that our parts aren't real, and that's going to lead to more harm. So one of the guys in that audience that was clapping like a fucking seal when this was going on, God, I hope he never dates a trans girl. I mean, this is the thing. I like the lefty creators. I do. I like Vosh. I like Demon Mama. I like Dr. Heem from what I've seen. What's his name? Is it PF, DF? I can't remember. But Signifier. It's an African-American gentleman. He's fucking amazing. I watched his video on buck breaking, and it was so fucking validating, especially in regards to this conversation. FD, thank you. FD Signifier. He's fucking great. Was it Liz on our server pointed us to him.
Yeah.
I need you guys to understand something, is that we can critique people without hating them. So to say that, for example, Niana said in chat, Vosh is misogynistic, I don't think that's true. I think that's too simple. Too easy a claim. I don't think Vosh is misogynistic. I think Vosh cares about optics, and I think Vosh is a person who cares deeply about leftist politics and supports trans people. I can't see that many arguments and say the guy's not really, like, down for trans people. But I think that the problem is when he doesn't understand something, he starts to invalidate it or shut it down. Or when he finds an edgy joke funny, he doesn't understand or doesn't want to understand the way that edgy joke may land differently with other trans people. So instead of just saying we're going to be offended or bothered, maybe you could say the fact that that is deeply fucking invalidating. If you found that joke funny out there, like, that's cool. People can't help what they find funny. But as CSY said in chat, everybody has blind spots, including cis men. If you're a cis man who has never once had to question your gender, then you have to ask yourself where that comes from, because it's not just a simple issue of logicking it out. Because when your trans viewers, when your trans fans, me included, go, hey, this is a problem, that's an issue. And this has been a regular complaint I've had about Vosh as a fan of Vosh's. Because, let me be honest, I like Vosh's ideas about democratization of the workplace. I like Vosh's ideas about how to bring about more socialism, and how do we advocate for things, and how do we work within the systems that exist. Generally speaking, if it's about politics, I genuinely agree with a lot of stuff. Not all of it, but most of it. But when it comes to culture issues, we hit a lot of differences. Vosh really seems to hate the MCU. I think the MCU is fucking fantastic. That's a little different thing, not a huge issue. But when we get to things like Vosh doesn't see xenogenders or neopronouns as real, he looks at them as nicknames. That's an issue. Right? Or when we talk about whether what Dave Chappelle did was transphobic, that's a thing. I'm not saying allies have to agree with us all the time. I'm not even saying everyone has to agree with me all the time. Be nice. Get more shit done, but it's not necessary. I think I'm more just pointing out the fact that, like, what I said in the previous video is true. We are all in this together, but people need to see what we're talking about, what our perspectives are. And they need to understand what those are. Does that mean we're right about everything? No. But they have to be counted, they have to be weighed, they have to be looked at. They can't just be ignored outright as being offensive, because to some degree, what Vosh and other lefties said was no different than what Dave said. Our legitimate concerns, our genuine hurt was blown off as offense. A word I am quickly learning to fucking hate. I am not offended. I am hurt. I am angry. I am disgusted. That stuff bothers me. Go ahead, Zena.
And I want to be clear, when we think about this stuff, the thing that always comes into my mind with these jokes is that there is a really high, 1, suicide rate, and 2, murder rate. Like, there is a very real way that when you are trans and you are just walking around on the street, like, no, you do have to be careful. Where, depending on what city you are, you know, some places are better than others, but transphobic violence is real and it does happen. And when that's the backdrop that these jokes are being made on top of, no, it comes off as crass and just completely like a complete lack of awareness of how that system is functioning. And having, you know, a massive comedian, right, you know, try and make a joke like this that somehow maybe wouldn't, you know, kind of fly and maybe would normalize it for cis people. This is, you know, the way that you can talk about people. It's not okay, right? Not when you take into account, you know, people not being able to support themselves, and people, like, actually having violence against them for this stuff. We can't be normalizing, you know, derogatory stuff or, you know, talking about people's body parts in that format with the backdrop of violence behind it. That doesn't help us.
Well, and that's my point, is, right, like, if someone sees that special and the message they take from that special is essentially a trans woman's genitals are not real, then the problem is the next time a guy fucks a trans girl, and that's been deeply insinuated into this conversation now, because so many people came to his aid, so many people stood up and clapped. Doesn't that by definition mean that that person is going to then perceive her as not a woman? Because if she's not got real parts, if her parts are not a woman's parts, if in some ways she is not valid, how does that not lead to panic defenses?
Right? Well, and we've got a huge history of people, cis people especially, feeling like they have to ask and know exactly what's in your pants. This happened, was it Katie Couric asked Laverne Cox this, like, on her show one time. This is how Katie Couric ended up going, oh shit, I actually have to, like, look into this, and did a whole documentary on trans people. Because before that, she got called out, you know, by Laverne Cox for, you know, asking about genitals and surgery and all of that stuff. And that's just that weird medicalization of people's bodies that just gets used to invalidate them. And the thing is, people can go shut the fuck up about other people's genitals. I'm sorry, you don't need to ask, and you don't need to know, and you certainly don't need to know what surgeries anybody has had. It's cool, you know, to share and be happy about, you know, the things going on with you, but do you need the invasive questions from people that may or may not know you? No. And so this joke really does, like, play off of those tendencies that are already there from people. It just goes hand in hand with, you know, the media already trying to, you know, make people's bodies the butt of the joke or, like, the headline, right? Instead of actually focusing on them as a person.
Here's why I hate the term cancellation. Because the only people that are ever canceled are people who have no power, or who have very little power compared to the elite. I'll give you an example. Contra was canceled. And you may say, Contra makes a fuck ton of money. Contra is a well-off woman who lives in a Victorian home. I would say Contra is a well-known and well-off YouTuber who, while does good work and does very good videos, has been the victim of harassment and having to move and any number of things, go back and watch canceling. She doesn't have a security staff. She doesn't have, you know, fucking people to protect her. The fact of the matter is that, like, Dave Chappelle's not canceled. Fuck, R. Kelly for the longest time wasn't canceled. R. Kelly was still wandering around doing the awful things that he was doing until very recently. Yeah, Louis C.K. is still doing comedy. If you are a actual celebrity, and I don't mean like a micro celebrity on the internet, if you are an actual fucking celebrity, you have bodyguards. You have power. Power is very different than just money. Your name comes with weight.
And you absolutely have the ability to have other people, like, handle the mentally taxing stuff that you might otherwise have to deal with. You know, you've got money to pay other people to do that stuff for you.
And so we get into this problem where people go, well, canceling's real, canceling's not. And I'll say this is my take. Canceling is nonsense when it comes to any kind of celebrity. J.K. Rowling is still on Twitter. It just doesn't exist for the elite.
How long did it take Trump to even get banned off Twitter?
Creating an insurrection.
Yeah.
How long did it take R. Kelly to finally get arrested after the scores of children he hurt? These people don't get canceled. The people that get canceled are people who have money and a modicum of success, and then communities online tear them apart. And they know why they do this. They want power, just like anyone else. They feel hurt, they feel upset, and then they lash out at somebody. Yeah, Contra is as she's put it, and I'm not going to say the T slur, but she's the trans 1%. She has a middle-class background, she makes okay money, and she's been to college. However, she's not making, I have an entire security force levels of money. This is my problem, is that when we ever use canceling, like, oh god, Dave Chappelle's gonna get canceled. How? He's still on Twitter. He's still doing specials. His special is still up on Netflix.
All of his past work is still out there, still accessible. Yeah.
All that stuff is still there. So his whole whining, and that's what it was whining about being canceled, really essentially comes down to, well, people said bad things about me. But, yeah, people said bad things about you, but how bad? The ways that alt-writers come after people on YouTube? The ways that people will dehumanize one of us in the comments? Sure, people can say awful things about Dave Chappelle, but he never sees any of that. That's what his power affords him, the ability to not have to interact with any of that. So his whinging about the fact that he's going to get canceled for this because people had an opinion about him, when he has enough power to not care, is really just kvetching for no particular reason. One of the things I learned from that buck-breaking video is this idea that there really is a belief within some in the black community that trans people are either this thing that was created to spread degeneracy in the black community, or somehow are this distraction that takes away from other issues, forgetting, of course, that there are, of course, black gay people, black trans people, etc. And this is my issue, is that everybody's fine calling out a bigot when that bigot is, like, Caucasian. Right? But the moment that is a person of color, or a trans person, or someone else, everybody starts to really fucking get weird. If Dave Chappelle had been a white comedian making these same jokes, the only people who would have defended him would have been the alt-right. But because he's a well-known black comedian who had his own show that talked about race issues, and in a particularly good way. I'm not going to say his show wasn't great, but by all definition, he would have been crucified if he had been white. But because he's black, everyone gets weird about it, because he's then creating a dichotomy. It's black versus trans. Spectacular Schneiderman said, transphobia is a product of white supremacy and decades of colonial indoctrination that has affected the black community. It also contributes to the hyper-toxic male masculinity among many black men. Yeah, because how many black boys are afraid of coming out as, trans, later trans girls, of course. How many black men are afraid to come out as bi or gay? That, of course, was a huge issue in the 80s because there was such stigma within those communities, both because of the Christian background and because of the conservative background, that age just spread because people could never be honest about where they had been with because it would have destroyed their reputations or who they are. I mean, this is not hard, guys. Dave Chappelle is just in a long line of that same tradition. So anyway, let's look at this fucking thing. Netflix just fired the organizer of the trans employee walkout. So as I briefly mentioned in the other video, due to this Dave Chappelle special, a lot of shit happened. Namely, Netflix doubled down on him like fucking twice.
Yep. So now we're not just talking about Dave Chappelle,
but the overall systemic transphobia of Netflix. Their belief that because, as Tara Field put it, I think her name's Tara Field. Tara Field put it, you can't pay a carbon offset for bigotry. So just because you have a trans movie or trans documentary, that doesn't mean that you necessarily get to ignore what happened. So let's read this. Let me know if you guys can hear this.
Netflix has fired a leader of the trans employee resource group who was organizing the upcoming October 20th walkout. The employee, who is black and currently pregnant, asked not to be named for fear of online harassment. They have been encouraging trans employees and allies to walk out of work in protest of Netflix's handling of the Dave Chappelle special The Closer. The employee declined to speak to The Verge for this story. All these white people are going around talking to the press and speaking publicly on Twitter, and the only person who gets fired is the black person who was quiet the entire time, says a former employee in an interview with The Verge. That's absurd, and just further shows that black trans people are the ones being targeted in this conversation.
So let's get that clear. A black and currently pregnant employee who is organizing the walkout, not being named due to fear of online harassment, was encouraging trans employees and allies to walk out, got fired. So this isn't just someone telling some edgy jokes. This is now an institution systemically backing jokes that were harmful. This is why I do not like a lot of the critique, a lot of the discourse around this, because it's dumb. It is reductive and minimizing, and frankly starts to look like gaslighting. I'm not joking. If you're someone who has a parasocial relationship with a lefty online creator, and then that person tells you something isn't transphobia, I'm sorry. If they're wrong, it's really hard to want to go against that. There's a natural urge, if you have that parasocial relationship, to want to believe them. So, let us continue.
The employee was terminated on suspicion of leaking metrics to the press related to the Dave Chappelle special. Those metrics about how much Netflix paid for The Closer and how many people it reached subsequently ended up in a report on Bloomberg. While the employee had shared the metrics internally, they spoke out against the leaks to colleagues, worried they might hurt the walkout movement. The leaking of internal data is highly unusual at Netflix. While the company prides itself on transparency, employees are told that the culture can only thrive when Netflix data remains internal.
Let's keep going.
A Netflix spokesperson confirmed the employee's dismissal. "We have let go of an employee for sharing confidential, commercially sensitive information outside the company," they said. "We understand this employee may have been motivated by disappointment and hurt with Netflix, but maintaining a culture of trust and transparency is core to our company." Controversy surrounding The Closer, which was widely criticized by trans activists for being transphobic, has roiled Netflix in recent weeks. The
Also,
company
black
suspended
activists, don't
Tara
forget.
Field, a trans software engineer who posted a viral tweet thread about the controversy, for attending a director-level meeting to which she wasn't invited. Field has since been reinstated. The company is now sending employees details about what meetings they're allowed to attend.
Yeah, so they smacked her down for wanting to come to this meeting because that shit needed to be talked about. And what is this? The employee was terminated on suspicion of leaking metrics. So the employee who was fired... While the employee had shared the metrics internally, they spoke out against the leaks to colleagues. Worried they might... Wait, so did they fire... Guys, am I hearing this wrong? Like, is this saying right here, like, let's listen to that part again, because this is really, this sounds like a fucking scapegoat.
The employee was terminated on suspicion of leaking metrics to the press related to the Dave Chappelle special. Those metrics about how much Netflix paid for The Closer and how many people it reached subsequently ended up in a report on Bloomberg. While the employee had shared the metrics internally, they spoke out against the leaks to colleagues, worried they might hurt the walkout movement.
So this person spoke out against these leaks, saying that they would potentially hurt the walkout movement, and clearly did not advocate for them. But then were the one that was fired for them. What? Like, when people wonder why we're upset about this, the thing you have to realize is that it's not just about Dave Chappelle and some shitty jokes. The shitty jokes are a thing. They're absolutely a thing. The problem is that the shitty jokes aren't just the only thing going on. It's that there is clearly an atmosphere of very real transphobia in this situation. So, if you're gonna come at me and say that I'm a white supremacist or whatever, you're just lying. You're actively incorrect. My community knows different, and the people of color in my community know different. I'm really getting tired of getting that claim. I support BLM. I support equality in all forms. I have said on this channel multiple times that I am a privileged white woman. And the fact of the matter is that I know that there are people of color who are trans who have lives much, much more difficult than mine. If I was a white supremacist, do you really think I would give a shit about those things? Of course not. You're saying it because it is a thought-terminating cliche to shut me and Zena down. Because you don't like what we're saying. Because it's very easy, very simple, to be the person in the marginalized group going, this is offensive, or this is harmful, or this is going to cause direct, in-the-world harm. It's a lot harder when someone points at you and says, you're part of the problem. And that is what we are saying to Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle is part of the problem. He is part of the same conservative part of the black community that has created massive problems for LGBT members and is one of the massive reasons why members of that community struggle so much. Now, that is not the only reason. It's not even the largest reason. There are systemic reasons. There are very real reasons in regards to economics. Let's see, we can go into transphobia, the way in which intersectionality sucks ass. Like, at least as far as just what the outcomes you get by actually, going over it. Like, this is my problem. If you're going to call me these things, those comments just get deleted at this point. You have to tell us and explain to us what the issue is. This is the same problem that happened before with the Professor Flowers thing, and I mentioned this in the two previous videos, and I'm still angry about it. I don't like ethnostates. I don't. And because I agreed with the notions of Vosh was sharing in that, and even went so far as to making sure that I was accurate, I went on, found other black creators, made sure that I understood what was going on, still got called this, had a massive message on the fucking comments saying how I need to condemn all of these people and how I need to apologize, and why did I hide the video? I didn't hide the video, I didn't like the segment, so I didn't post it. But the fact that you started off with that bad faith criticism tells me this isn't really about convincing me. It's about silencing me.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. You can also ring the bell if you want to be notified of our videos. If you want to help the channel, you can donate at streamlabs.com/transgirltherapist/tip. You also can become a patron at patreon.com/transgirltherapist. As low as $3, you can support our channel. Thanks for watching.